concept for this video is just chaos. Hi besties, welcome. I hope you're doing well. Today we're doing something a little unhinged and I'm already regretting my decision. I thought it would be fun to download a dating app and then read my match's favorite books and then like judge them based on that. I don't know. I thought of the idea for this video, downloaded Hinge, made a profile in which I'm reading in a bunch of the photos, and then also I have like a prompt on Hinge that says first round is on me if you tell me your favorite book, thinking this will alert the masses. Like, I want to know what your favorite book is. Please start the conversation with that. Didn't work well at first. I spent a couple days thinking I was not going to get anybody to respond to that. People were responding to the other things on my profile, but nobody was telling me their favorite book. And I'm thinking, are people illiterate? Like, what's going on? Why won't anybody just tell me their favorite book? I started to reach out to people and open with, hi, what's your favorite book? At this point, I just wanted to salvage the video. And then I finally got a response in which somebody told me that their favorite book was Pimpology, The 48 Laws of the Game by Pimpin' Ken. And they were dead serious. This person was dead serious. They were like, it's not what it sounds like. Au contraire, because from my Goodreads research, it is exactly what it sounds like. I'll tell you for free, I'm not reading Pimpology because I don't want to spend money on it. But I did spend quite a bit of time reading some Goodreads reviews. I'm going to share some of those with you. So first of all, the description of Pimpology, the 48 laws of the game. Sharing the unspoken rules that have taken him from the ghetto streets to executive suites, Pimpin' Ken shows how readers can pimp their whole lives and get the money, power, and respect that they dream of. So it's like a self-help book from the perspective of a pimp. Let's read a review. This reader rated it 1 star and said, I'm wondering, can I unsee this one? And then includes a quote from the book that goes as follows. This hoe was in it to win it. Not only did she motivate the next worthy hoe who wanted a rise in the game, but she set the standard for my pimpin'. She helped me elevate my pimpin'. Direct quote. Another Goodreads user says, Pimpin' Ken tries to pass off his book saying in life there are pimps and hoes, people who do the controlling and those who are controlled. Lots of other reviews say that it's very misogynistic, that it blatantly talks about human trafficking. Anyway, I'm not gonna read that one. And I also didn't continue my conversation with that particular Hinge user. Shortly, I got another hit. Somebody responded and said that their favorite book was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willenick. Did not know who this person was, but I did look it up, and the subtitle of the book is How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. So that's not exactly my cup of tea, and I was like, oh my God, we're getting to the point where nobody's responded. I'm gonna have to read this book that has been blurbed by Megyn Kelly, Bill O'Reilly, and Sean Hannity. It's getting dark. I was thinking about completely giving up on the entire video when somebody finally responded and said, The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. So I looked it up, and while it doesn't sound like something I would normally gravitate to, it does sound like something I could stomach. And that was a huge step up right off the bat. They also included a little bit about why they liked this book, which I really appreciated. They said, The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly was my favorite growing up. They appreciate how it depicts an adolescent's struggle with OCD. And I was very intrigued because I'm a person that has OCD. And my main struggle with OCD happened when I was an adolescent, when I was about 11. It obviously has not gone away, but it's become much more manageable for me. But at that time, it was completely unmanageable. It was a battle to like exist against my OCD. So I'm very intrigued by this book. It also is a like fantasy-esque book, it seems, there's a 12-year-old named David and he's dealing with the loss of his mother. He reads a bunch of fantasy books and magic books and then finds that his reality and those books have started to like meld together and he doesn't really know where he is. And I'm very interested to see what it's like and to see what this depiction of OCD is like. I got some more interesting recommendations and they started to roll in much faster to the point where I was like, okay, I have to just pick some. And I wanted to pick ones that I thought I had a pretty good chance of liking because I'd rather do that than read Pimpology. I got someone who said The Stranger by Albert Camus. This book has been on my like TBR for a really long time. So this was the perfect excuse to read it. And also, I've heard that it's sort of absurdist and dark. This one I'm really excited about. It's also short, and that is a win. The last two books for this video are from the same person because I've wanted to read both of them for so long. And when she recommended them both, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna read those. It was actually really funny because I asked what their favorite book was, and then they were like, wait, I recognize you from BookTube. And I was like, that's terrifying. However, I'm making a video and that's like why I'm on here. And she was super cool and she was like, oh, okay. And she said, here are my two favorites. Thank you if you're watching. She said her two favorites were The Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson, which is a book in verse, and That's All I Know. It's like a love story, I think, but it's about this little boy who's like a monster and he comes of age. I don't really know what this is about, but I'm excited. It's also very short. It's in verse. I'm intrigued. I don't know too much, but I know that multiple people whose opinions I greatly respect have told me to read this one, so I'm excited. Next is Piranesi, who knows, not me, by Susanna Clark. And I'm super stoked about this one because I know that it also has sort of some Greek myth elements.
That is not correct.
But I've also heard from people that while you're reading it, you really don't know what's going on until the end. So I'm intrigued. I've heard that the writing is just beautiful and so many people have told me specifically that they think I would really love it. So I was really stoked when she mentioned this book. And then I went to buy it at Barnes & Noble. Before I even mentioned this book, the bookseller who I was talking to about the books that I like and stuff was like, oh, if you like those books, you have to read Piranesi. And I was like, that's literally the book that I came looking for. And she went on and on about how much she loved it. And so I was super stoked because I always love it when I get a good recommendation from a bookseller. And it's the Women's Prize for Fiction winner of 2021. So some big shot thinks it's good. So anyway, these three books, along with the Book of Lost Things, which I'm going to listen to on audio because my library has it, are the books I'm reading that my Hinge matches have recommended to me. I don't know. Let's just read the books. I'm rooting for your book taste to be good because if it's not, I'll be honest about it. Okay, let's go read them. Congratulations, loyal viewer. You've unlocked a new spot in my home. If you can see the plant behind me that hasn't been watered in 3 months. No, you can't. I read the first book, which was the Book of Lost Things, and I didn't like it. Was not for me. You can't write a book, boast that it has an OCD main character, and then have that character's OCD only be a factor in the first 10% of the book, and then somehow it's completely gone. If that was how this illness worked, I'd be a different person. That was so weird to me, first of all. Like, I thought the portrayal of his OCD at the beginning wasn't terrible, but it was literally for such a small portion of the book and then it goes away, or it's like very much a non-factor. And I don't understand because I was told that it was like a big part of the book. So that was confusing, first of all. But then second of all, this character basically goes into this family library and he reads all of these fantasy books, these magical books, basically fairy tales and stuff, and he basically falls into a fairy tale world and then he has to find his way out and get back home. As soon as he fell into that fairy tale world, I was like, okay, I'm out. And it was like the classic trope of the little kid that gets stuck in an unknown world and has to befriend people and be brave and then get back home. And I just felt like I had experienced that exact same story before and better. I just thought it was pretty unimpressive. Apparently it's won a bunch of awards and people really like this book. So I guess it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. I was just so bored. I was listening to this book on audio. I would go like 20 minutes and realize I had not listened to a single word because I was so bored. The number of times I had to go back and listen, and then I just gave up on doing that. And I was like, well, if I don't hear it the first time, I felt literally no emotion when it was over besides relief. It also felt kind of juvenile. Because this is sold as adult literature, I was kind of taken aback by the very childlike way that it was written. Makes sense because it has a child main character. He's like 10 years old. But it just felt like everything was spoon-fed to you the way you might find in a children's book. So this was not a win for me. Do I think it's a red flag? No. It's not looking good for contestant number 1 in this competition that they're completely unaware they're a part of. Will never be made aware that they're a part of. So I'm sure that he's not losing sleep over this. And if you are losing sleep, listen to this book because it'll knock you right out. Let's talk about the next book. Okay, let's talk about contestant number 2. She recommended me The Autobiography of Red and Piranesi. This book. I have now read both of them. Let's start with Autobiography of Red. I did not like this book at all. This went way over my head. I don't even really know what it was about. I don't super know what happened. And it was all in verse, but it did not need to be. It literally just felt like she clicked enter every once in a while and started a new line. And even though it was under 200 pages, it took me like a week to get through because I did not want to read it. Like, it just made me so mad. What is my dog destroying? Oh, she was just ripping up a king-size comforter. Somehow my dog ripping up a comforter just now was still less frustrating than this book. I didn't think it was satisfying. I didn't really get it. I thought it just felt so pretentious for the sake of being pretentious and didn't really have a ton to say. I know that there are people out there who love this book. I'm so happy for you, but it was not for me. I think the whole time I was reading this, I was just thinking I could be doing so many other things with my time. This was not a win for me. But then I read Piranesi. This one I think was a win. When you think about it. The thing about Piranesi is that you don't know what's happening in the book for the whole book. So if I told you what this book was about, I would be spoiling it for you. And therefore, I shall not tell you what it's about. What I can tell you is that we open interior daytime, some vestibule or other, with our narrator, whose name is Piranesi, and he lives in this weird labyrinth that has like ocean levels and then like building levels and then like the sky. And in this weird labyrinth, there's lots of statues and there's only one other human person in the labyrinth with him who he calls the other. You start to find some things out about this labyrinth. I couldn't stop reading. Like, I did not want to stop reading. I read this one so fast and I thought it was really, really compelling. And then the ending came. And here's the thing. I think it was one of those situations where everybody had hyped this up to me, like, most satisfying ending of a book you'll ever read. You will never find a better ending in a book ever. This is the best book I've ever read. I had so many people tell me this was their favorite book they'd ever read when I posted that I was reading it. And like, I didn't feel that way, but I'm glad I read it and I had a really good time. And so for that, it's a win. But I just like the journey. Like the ending, I was like, oh, okay, got it. My mind didn't melt because of the ending. I was more impressed by the way that the author wrote the process of the book. Like the discovery of everything was really compelling and interesting to me. The end, I was like, oh, and it was satisfying in a way, but also, I hate to be that person, but I did see it coming. And everybody told me, I was like, I think I know what's gonna happen. And everybody I was talking to was like, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. And then I was like, I did. But I did feel really smart reading this one. But I kind of wanted it to take me by surprise. So it was like catch-22, bait and switch. I don't think I used either of those phrases correctly just then. I've been thinking about it a lot since I finished it. And I feel like if I read it again, I would like it even more. Because I feel like I could piece together stuff now that I know the things that I know. But I can't really tell you what I know, because then you would know, and then you wouldn't have to read it because you would know. I guess in the context of this video, this is a green flag book to me. It's compelling. It's like, intellectual, but not in a pretentious way. It felt very accessible to me. And I feel like this is just a really banging book recommendation. So she contains multitudes. I'm grateful for her just because I got to read this. So, woohoo! What's next? The Stranger. This was kind of crazy. This book was good though, I think. This is a French classic, and it has a very famous opening line, and that line is, Maman died today, or yesterday maybe, I don't know. That is like a perfect summation of the tone of this novel. Our main character is incredibly indifferent and nonchalant about everything, even in the face of great tragedy, grief, guilt, all of these things. He's just sort of indifferent to the world. And that is the sort of absurdist lens that Camus is writing with in this book. I thought it was good. I read it in like a couple hours. It's very short. It's like 120 pages. So I read it very quickly and I was very compelled. I wanted to know what happened next. However, after I read it, I was like, okay, I read that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I enjoyed it while I was reading it. I don't foresee it being a book that I think about a lot in the future, but I'm glad that I read it. And I thought it did have some interesting commentary on the justice system. It's commenting on the legal system of France in the 80s. So not exactly the legal system I'm familiar with, but they're very similar. The author clearly has some qualms with the way that system runs and uses this book as a vehicle to give a logical argument as to his side of those ideas, and I liked that element. The book didn't feel super human to me, and I think that was kind of the point, because he's so devoid of emotion, and that's sort of why so much of what happens to him in this book happens to him, is because he's just sort of a blank slate of a person, but that makes it harder to connect with the character. So I get why it was done, but I don't know if it was my favorite choice in terms of just as a reader, what's happening. I literally think I was like huffing paint or something. Like, where are my brain cells today? This is ridiculous. The writing is also very simplistic. It's giving Ernest Hemingway. Like, it's very clipped, it's very terse writing, very easy to read. I will say, just like with Piranesi, I can't tell you what this is about, because if I told you what it's like about, I would spoil the whole book. But there's a big twist halfway through. It's split into two parts. And at the very end of part one, a thing happens. And then all of part two is dealing with the aftermath of this thing that's happened. It did sort of remind me of Simone de Beauvoir, which makes sense because she's also a French writer. I sort of saw some similarities just in the writing style and in the observational quality of this book. It reminded me of The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir, in that it's a lot of one person sort of observing the world, explaining to the reader their observations, and also how that's impacting the character. If somebody I was interested in told me, my favorite book is The Stranger, I wouldn't say, red flag, I'm not gonna date you. I would say, can you tell me why? Because maybe they could shed some insight into some of the stuff that I was missing. Those are a few of the books that people on Hinge told me were their favorites that I then read. I definitely don't recommend Pimpology, the 48 Laws of the Game. I have to go get ready for my Patreon holiday party with all of my patrons. If you're interested in supporting my channel and joining the Patreon, I'll leave the link below. We run 2 book clubs every month and have a great community. If you want to help me out in a way that doesn't require you to open your wallet, you can hit subscribe or like and comment down below. I write book reviews and create more book content over on Instagram at sally.stacked, and I've got some fun readathon-esque announcements coming soon, so keep your eyes out for those. But other than that, we can wrap this puppy up. I read a bunch of books. I told you what I thought. That's how this thing works. All right. In case you haven't heard it today, I love you. Bye.